to the Transformative Technology panel at SAND 2014. Really happy to have you all here. So the way we're going to set up this panel is I'm going to give a short introduction, including introducing myself, and give a brief overview of what we're doing here and what this discussion is going to be about. And then we're going to have a chance to hear introductions from each of our incredibly distinguished and amazing panelists here, which we're really lucky to have. And then we're going to start a discussion about the space of transformative technology. I have some questions for each of the panelists, and then we're also going to have a chance to open up the forum for all of you to ask any questions that you might have as well. So science and non-duality is actually a perfect way of framing the idea of transformative technology, because it points to a relationship between a rational, scientific understanding of reality and how it can work with or complement a deeper, more experiential understanding of reality, one that points to, across spiritual traditions, a sense of balance, harmony, peace, deeper awareness. We've heard lots of different language at this conference to describe it, and that's not my role here. I think the starting point is that when we talk about, for example, non-duality, we all have this implicit sense that it's pointing towards some deeper experience, more meaningful experience, a profound experience of reality. And when we bring it together with science, or in this case specifically technology, what we're talking about is the way in which these man-made tools, which are really the manifestation of mind, human-made tools, woman-made tools. You can keep going on that one for a while. Are really just a manifestation of mind, of thought. So if we can imagine it clearly enough and deeply enough, then we can create it. And so in that sense, there's no limit to what technology can be. The only limit is the human mind. And so in that sense, transformative technology is imagining what types of technologies or tools can we build and develop as humans to be catalysts or facilitators to point in the same direction that spiritual traditions have been pointing for thousands of years. And my background is that a few years ago, I was on a traditional engineering path and ended up also simultaneously on a spiritual path. And for myself, I saw that these two things could really be combined. It wasn't even that there wasn't some kind of issue between them that needed to be resolved, but actually they were a perfect and natural complement. And so in my path as sort of an enlightenment engineer, so to speak, or striving towards that, I've had the great pleasure to meet the wonderful individuals that are on this panel. And they, each in their own right, are pioneers in this space, working from different perspectives, with different types of technologies, but they all are making incredible contributions, and we're really lucky to have them here to hear their perspective. So I'm not going to take the time to individually introduce them. I'm going to allow them to do that themselves. And so we're going to go one by one in order, and I'd like for each panelist to take about 3 minutes to introduce yourself, your short snippet of your background, and I'm sure that will also overlap with how is your work connecting in with this space of transformative technology. So Deborah, please, would you start us off?
Thank you, Mikey. I'm Deborah Rozman. I'm the CEO of Heartmath. How many of you have heard of Heartmath? Most everybody. So my background is a psychologist, but Heartmath's mission really is to help people connect with who they truly are, get their mental, emotional, physical systems in balance and alignment, and to be able to access more of their higher self, source, higher dimensional self. We don't always publish that's what we're all about, but I can freely say that here. Our whole focus has been to reach the masses of people, reach the street without any need for a spiritual context or belief system, but for people to learn simple tools that were scientifically validated to be able to listen to and follow their heart. And that being not just a metaphor, but a real state of physiological synchronization and coherence between the heart and brain, where we get that intuitive access, that connection with really who we truly are. And I remember when Doc Childrey, the founder of Heartmath, invited me to help start the research lab with him back in late 80s. We started in 1991. He said, let's look at the spaces between the heartbeat, because that's where the dimensional coupling is, or the phase match between the non-dual self and the physical self, which is obviously materialistic and dual. And using the language here of this conference, we discovered so much about the heart that's much more than a blood pump. And so much more about the heart as a key to self-empowerment, self-regulation, and intelligence, higher intelligence. So our technology is all designed to be a Trojan horse, the M-wave in inner balance, to help people get into coherence through whatever their reason and motivation, and to be able to access their higher self.
Thank you.
Thanks. I'm Robin Arnott. I'm an artist and game designer. I am here with a project called Sound Self, which, along with a bunch of other really interesting pieces of art, is if you go to the entrance, the main entrance to the hotel, right across from the library, there's some really cool projects there, and Sound Self is one of them. So I'm using virtual reality. I see what I'm doing as, or I see my work as a game designer as being a trance designer, and trance is, I think through all of the traditions, all of the non-dualistic traditions, any religious tradition, any shamanic tradition, there are all these rituals built into these cultural practices designed to induce trance, and the trance state is a very effective mechanism for introducing a person to their non-dual self. So I see in our culture one of the most, if not the most effective tool for inducing trance states as the video game. And I'm using, as a game designer, I'm using the same rules of creation, complex, interesting systems that engage the mind, engage the attention, but instead of drawing the attention outward on some external system that you need to solve or optimize for, drawing the attention inward to the same place that you might through any of these historic classical transformative technologies. Things like singing bowls, group ohms. I see these things as technologies as much of a video game is, and we can design a video game to do the same things that those are, but with the extra power of electricity and game design.
Cool. Thanks, Robin.
I have the sense, oh good, this is on, okay. My name is Julia Mossbridge, and by day I'm a neuroscientist / experimental psychologist at Northwestern University, and by night / weekend I am working on getting the Android version of my app out, which is now available for the iPhone. And this app is called Choice Compass. It's a decision support tool for anytime you have a choice that you need to make, and you want to tune in to your unconscious wisdom about the choice as expressed through your heart activity. It draws from the research in Heartmath that I read when I was in my 20s. And I kept thinking about that research since then, and I thought, well, I just want to make a tool that can very, very briefly introduce people in a context in which they can actually use the result very quickly to this idea that their heart knows. In my neuroscience work, I'm getting more and more interested in the interaction between non-conscious or unconscious processing including not just the brain, but the whole body, so anything that we're not conscious of, and our conscious experience, our conscious waking experience. And so the question, it turns out, I didn't, of course, realize this when I started working on the app, but it turns out the question that the app is trying to answer, which is how can we use tools to help us get in contact with our unconscious wisdom. And the question I'm trying to answer in the lab, which is, what is the relationship between unconscious and conscious processing? What are the boundaries there? How do those mechanisms work? Turns out to be related, and that hadn't occurred to me until I came here and started talking about both things. So I'm really excited to be part of this amazing group of people that Mikey has curated, and I know there's more people out there who are working on similar ideas, and I'm excited to see this movement grow.
Thanks.
I got my own. It's red and it matches your top. Sorry, I'm Harry Massey. I founded a health company called Nest Health about 12 years ago. The very short version of the story is I was very ill with chronic fatigue syndrome, and out of that, because I couldn't visit any practitioners and find out what was going on in my own body, I had this stupid idea at the time of trying to work out a way of how you could get people better from the comfort of your own home, and basically provide people with the diagnosis tools and also the tools to get them better. I was fortunate enough to meet this scientist from Australia who'd mapped out the information of the human body field. We ended up meeting in LA, and I'm English, he's Australian, and we ended up creating this system and built a company back over in Europe. A few years later, we also made a couple of films. One was called The Living Matrix, which Heartmath was also in that film, and another film called Choice Point. And long and short, we now live in America, and it's probably your turn. There we go.
Thanks, Harry.
Passing the mic, thank you. Thank you. My name's Linda Stone, and my background is cognitive psychology. I spent part of my years as an educator, and then spent nearly a decade at Apple Computer doing pioneering work in multimedia, and then nearly a decade at Microsoft doing pioneering research and work in online social life and virtual worlds. And left Microsoft in 2002, but I had already begun when I was at Microsoft to study attention. I coined the phrase continuous partial attention, and found that really resonated with people who were trying to understand their relationship with technology. And they would ask how they could get their attention back in this world that was dealing with the ubiquity of screens and the ubiquity of devices. And as I started to look at what was happening around us and our attention and technology, I realized that there was a psychophysiology to our relationship with technology, and that getting our attention back was not a matter of a list of rules like pay attention, don't be distracted, disconnect, that none of that was ever going to work, that there was an emotional base to what was going on, and a breathing base. And the breathing piece of it was the first thing I noticed. As I continued to do this research, I was in the midst of all this diagnosed with a bone infection, and people with knives started to cut out chunks of jaw, and I found myself, as my colleague Harry over here, dealing with chronic respiratory infections. So I started doing different breathing practices. And as I did these different breathing practices, as soon as I went over to deal with any screen in my life, I noticed that I was either breath holding or shallow breathing. And I gave this a name in late 2007, early 2008. I called this email apnea or screen apnea. And I did a lot of research around this, talked to a lot of researchers and people in healthcare, and realized that there was a relationship to pulse and to heart rate variability. I used the Heartmath technology just as Julia did. We all found that because it was a technology that supported us in understanding our relationship with our body. And I realized that I was not very embodied at the computer. So I began to look at the relationship of the autonomic nervous system, and then even more at the inner relationship of breathing, emotion, and attention, and started to think about how we could evolve our relationship with technology so that we stayed embodied in that relationship. So I look at this space in a slightly different way than Mikey, and I'll talk more about that later. I call it essential self skills, practices, and technologies, very much in sync with things that Deborah said about heart coherence and autonomic resilience, and how that contributes to health and a larger sense of interconnectedness.
Hello, Mike. Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you, Mikey. My name is Neema Moraveji, and during my PhD work at Stanford, I decided that I was going to do something, the most simple and largest impact thing that I could find. And the way I could summarize that most simply was to change the way the world breathes. And that if breath was as paramount and as tangible of a data type as steps and walking were, that would be a real change. So my dissertation title was called Augmented Self-Regulation. And what we essentially did was this breath awareness that your yoga instructor talks about, or that your meditation teacher, as you practice, that's always with us. I integrated that into this medium that we are always looking at, namely our screens, our technologies, as Linda was pointing to. So actually, during my graduate work, I called Linda, or emailed Linda. I was like, Linda, we're doing some stuff. What do you think? And we were showing in the lab this email apnea, or screen apnea, I should say. So did all that graduate work and said, I could stay in academia, or I could really try to bring this out into the world. So put academics on hold, where I had also started the Calming Technology Lab at Stanford and teach at the D school, the design school there. And started a company called Spire. We have a booth upstairs, just kind of right above us here. Spire comes from breath, respiration, where we've created the first activity tracker, like a Fitbit or a Jawbone, something like that, but it also tracks your breath, and it looks at your breathing rhythms and knows your state of mind, and it really magnifies one's breath awareness and self-awareness. So we're now in the process of, we're going to be shipping in a few weeks, and it's a very exciting time for us. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Neema.
Mikey, before you pick this up again, I just want to give everybody here a piece of technology that I find really useful and really fun for an environment like this. And that's that we don't really have a useful feedback system, because if you shout at us, it interrupts the flow of everything, and clapping is really loud or something. And throwing tomatoes, just nobody likes that. So if you like what you're hearing and just want to provide a little bit of feedback, like a little bit of snapping. This comes from the speech world. I learned this from my partner. And try it out. See if you like it. If you don't like it, no big deal. But if you do, I think it provides a nice...
Do you like Robin's suggestion?
Thank you.
They love your suggestion. Cool. Thanks for that addition, Robin. So thank you. Now you see why I had all these incredible people join us. So the next step here is I'm going to go through each panelist and ask a specific question that pertains to their work, and then we'll continue on after that. So, Deborah, you've been working at the intersection of technology and human heart and heart-centered feeling for many years. And what we're seeing now is a really interesting change in the technology landscape, something that you guys pioneered many years ago, but with the emergence of things like the Apple Watch, the Google Watch, Samsung devices that have built-in pulse sensors, is a consumer landscape that is about to be flooded with millions and millions of devices that are sensing pulse. And so my question to you is, A, what's going to happen here? How do you see the relationship between the heart and technology and human experience evolving? And what do you see the potential there and the potential pitfalls, the mistakes that we might make?
Good questions. It's actually a very exciting time, and we predicted this would happen years ago, but didn't know what the technology form factors would be. But now with all the activity monitors, the wearables, pretty soon you'll have heart rates and galvanic stimulation, every sensor in your underwear, and then it'll get implantable. So Heartmath is really sensor neutral, and we're preparing for all of this. We thought this would have happened 10 years ago, and it was part of a vision. As people get access to their body sensors, they get much more wisdom about that. I think what's happening to us right now is everybody has heart rate variability on their roadmap, and nobody knows what to do with it. So we're the experts in that over many years, and Samsung's come to us, Apple's come to us, all the big names, and it's a very exciting time because we want to be the intel inside of the heart intelligence, not exclusive to anybody. Because again, we look at it as a Trojan horse. As people learn what to do with heart rate variability, that it's really the emotional system that it gives us that window into and helps us reset our response to stress, our response to health issues, and enables us to build resilience, or as Linda calls it, autonomic resilience. It's a powerful tool to get a window into our heart, which is like a window into our connection with our soul, our spirit, ourself. And I think it's going to unfold because there's different levels of coherence, what we call psychophysiological coherence or heart coherence, which is driven by our emotional state, and our heart rate variability pattern reflects that and then signals the brain and the body. So the heart is really primary in receiving intuition or receiving unconscious signals, and then sends the information to the brain. So I think what's going to enable us to do is a lot of interconnectivity research as we get millions of people connected through all these devices and on our heart cloud, which we just launched. And those of you who have an M-Wave or Inner Balance and haven't upgraded it free, you can connect with the cloud. And there's gamification, there's training, but there's potential for aggregating data to really look to see what's happening at population health as well as spiritual connectivity. And that's really where it's exciting, not just for us, but others who explore in this area. Is the Global Coherence Initiative, which I'll talk about later, is all about that and how we connect with each other and the planet. So I see that's the strengths. The pitfalls are really, I think, of people just using heart rate variability feedback to just for overtraining or for limited usage. But, it's okay. They'll eventually discover it. And I really don't see any negative impact. I see a very bright future as people connect with not just quantitative self-tracking, but really what they can do with it, changing in real time their blood pressure, their emotional state, their heart rhythm pattern. And that's power. That's true self-empowerment.
Thank you. So, Robin, you've got a unique position on this panel as being the game designer in the group, someone who's really steeped in the gaming world, which is a huge world. And in terms of human attention hours, games probably use up more hours than, I don't know how to compare, but
certainly than meditation.
Certainly than meditation, by far greater than meditation. And so we're talking about a space of human engagement that's incredibly powerful. And what you're stepping into with your work is the intersection point between that incredibly powerful tool and meditation and what you're calling trance. And so my question for you is, what do you think is possible in the larger space of gaming in terms of bringing those types of experiences into the mainstream gaming world? Do you think that will ever be culturally acceptable or exciting? Can you see mainstream games with those kinds of experiences built into them?
Yes, absolutely can. And I think that a really good comparison to look at, who here is a gamer? Who here is a movie-er? All right, so a lot of us watch movies now. A lot more of us play games now, and I bet a lot of you who didn't raise your hand when I asked who are you a gamer, probably play a game on your iPhone, probably, play a crossword puzzle. These are all ways we interact with, and I consider everybody has a different definition of games, and thinking about what is the definition of games is a really useless conversation, but to me, but I'm gonna have it anyway. To me, a game is a system you engage with for the sake of engaging with it, not for some external function like you might with a tool. It's a sort of an art, a systemic art object. So I think that firstly, there's always, in spaces like this, it's always very easy to speak lowly of games as these distractions, right? And there certainly are addictive relationships to be had with games, just as there are with any entertainment system. And games' strength is also their weakness. Because they are so compelling, they are just as compelling to mind development as they are to potential addiction development. But there's something really beautiful happening in the game industry right now. It's been happening over the last 7 or so years, where we're seeing a transition away from power dynamics, domination dynamics, a game system. So when I say systems, when I say a system, what I mean is a set of rules of interaction with the video game. And these systems can be incredibly expressive. If you're playing Mario or something, there's a system of how you collect various upgrades to progress through the levels. You might describe that as a system or whatever, So these systems that we've seen games focused on in the past, I think, have almost exclusively been about domination and a story of self-empowerment. And not the kind of self-empowerment we're talking about here, more of an ego empowerment. This is really compelling, and they're fun, it's fun. But we're seeing this really incredible shift happening in the game industry away from these shallow domination-driven experiences towards more inclusive human experiences. One of my favorite games from about 2 years ago is this game called Journey, in which you are... has anybody here played Journey? Yeah. So Journey is really, I think, epitomizes a recent trend in game development to consider, okay, fun is the golden calf. Fun is not what we're trying to design systems for. It's... if you design for fun, I mean, fun is sort of a certain kind of shallow engagement. But you can go deeper than fun and explore connection, intimacy. And Journey is a game that mechanically explores intimacy, interdependence. It certainly has some of the tropes of video games and storytelling. It follows the narrative of the hero's journey. But it's exploring through its systems a feeling of human connection. So you don't have to have at the center of game design systems anymore these domination and ego empowerment ideals to be successful. Journey was a tremendously successful video game, which means that not only are artists thinking about this design space of systems design as an opportunity to explore more deep human experiences than just power. But also the industry, institutions like Microsoft, Sony, are taking these sorts of experiences very seriously.
And just as a background for people that don't know, Journey is a really interesting game because it's not a game of competition. It's a game where you show up in the game space and eventually you're even joined by another person, which is actually another person somewhere else in the world. And there's no way to compete. The entire game is around this beautiful collaboration between this person that you actually go on a journey with together. And so it's a completely different model for gameplay. That's why Robin's bringing it up.
Yeah. I mean, the only reason most games have centered around domination for so long is just habit. So I see Sound Self as part of a new wave of experiences that are not even about intimacy, are not really about anything, but are drawing the attention inwards to reflect whatever is within you. Sort of game design as meditation aid. But I definitely don't, and I say this, when I say as meditation aid, I sort of say that half-heartedly because I don't see it as a tool. I don't see it as something that you fit into your discipline. I see it as a piece of art that you engage with as a novelty. And maybe that teaches you something amazing about yourself and you'll develop a meditation practice, maybe not. But I think that having that introspective trance is a valuable experience in itself, whether or not it.
Maybe that's what gaming really... So maybe what gaming really has to offer is the fact that people already do it for its own sake.
Exactly.
Whereas people often come to meditation as something they have to do to get somewhere.
Exactly.
And so it can actually be a great vehicle for that self-awareness.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Robin.
Can I say one thing about what he just said?
Yes.
I just love that the game guy is the one who teaches us this, because that's totally gamifying. And I find myself going, God, I wonder if anyone's going to snap for me. Thank you, Nora.
Julia,
Mikey.
can I give you a new question?
Oh, yeah.
Put you on the spot. Okay, so your work, your research work, which we've had the pleasure of hearing, I think, multiple times so far in this conference. 11 times, I think. But who's counting? Except for Linda, who's your biggest fan, follows you to every talk. And your technology work with your Project Choice Compass are all really, in some way, connecting in with this relationship with choice, this relationship between the conscious and the subconscious, this notion of kind of how is it that we find ourselves navigating one path or another. And and so it's interesting that to bring technology into this picture, technology as a tool that can really tap into something that we're not actually aware of ourselves in a conscious sense in order to act as a guide, as a compass. And so I guess my question to you is, what do you see as the sort of the ability for technology to really tap into a deeper sense of knowledge, wisdom, and awareness in order to bring information back up to the surface for us? And how can that information be used to help us?
Holy cow. Okay. Yeah, so what I wanted to do was design a short circuit. So people could, because people trust science, we sort of deify science at this point in our culture. I don't know if I want to snap for that. I think that's a problem, but I understand what you're saying.
No, I'm snapping at your awareness.
The awareness of it, yeah. People deify their screens and they deify science. And so I thought, use someone's phone and use science to show them what's in their heart in a real short-term, 2-minute way. And then once they start to recognize, because really it's a validation tool. So when you make a choice between, switching your job or asking for a raise, and it keeps coming up telling you to ask for a raise, and you're scared to ask for a raise, but then this validation tool says, I really should just ask for a raise, right? Eventually, hopefully you throw away the tool, you don't need the screen anymore, because it's just telling you what you already know. So the goal is to get rid of the tool, but for a lot of people you need the tool. And so, so here's the tool. So that's the way I was thinking about it. But I think there's this, greater mystery. I know there's this greater mystery that I certainly don't have a handle on. That's very compelling to me about why it is that we evolved so that we don't know some very basic things about ourselves. Why is it that we evolved, that we have our conscious waking and awareness that is cut off from this information, not only about ourselves, but about our community, about the universe? Why are we traveling around in our lives in amnesia? How is that helpful? It's my daily question, and I don't have a good answer to it. And so part of me thought, well, maybe there's a very good reason for it, and I'm too stupid to figure that out. And if I build a tool that short circuits that, there'll be some negative consequences. So I thought about that for a while. And then I thought, oh, it's too complicated for me to figure out, and I'm having this unconscious pull or unconsciously driven pull towards creating the tool, so I'll just do it. And the people who are drawn towards it, those will be the people for whom it will help, I guess I will trust. I mean, at some point, that's, I guess what you have to do. So, but in my research, damn, I mean, there's no right experiment to answer the question that I want to answer. And so I keep trying to find the right experiment anyway, because that's what I know how to do. And so I'm aware that I'm trapped. And I think I learned something from each experiment. And so I guess I keep doing it for that reason and because I love the questions themselves, as Rilke said. So did that answer your question? I forgot what your question was.
You said some wonderful things, and it was a pleasure to hear you talk. So it was perfect. So yes.
Is this a point? I'd like to actually respond to. I think it's interesting that you're exploring something that I think has been explored. What do you call? I forget what you call oracles, divinity, right? It reminds me so much of the I Ching or my approach to tarot, where it's not that the layout of the tarot cards have some intrinsic message that you really need to hear. It's that it offers this reflection of what's really deep inside of you already. I think it's so. I think a theme that's kind of coming up here already is ancient tools reimagined with modern wisdom, and I just really admire that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, what's quite interesting in the tarot, and I just had a quick look at your app, but how do you know it's not giving the wrong reflection? Because I was just thinking about it. So with Heartmath, obviously, it would indicate fear, and it sounded like your app was gonna. That example you gave about going for the raise. Well, you're fearful about going for the raise. Well, in the Heartmath thing, the fear would be on a negative scale. So that might give you the wrong choice. And I was thinking, obviously you've got your brain, you've got your logical brain, then you've got your intuition. And actually, I find it's actually quite dangerous if you do one without the other. Like you always need to link your intellect and your logic with your intuition and brain, and then I think you get wiser. I mean, I've done it myself. For a couple of years, it's just a ridiculous experiment. I ran my business through a tarot deck, and I lost a couple of $1 million doing that. And then I've done other things where I now don't do that. I use my intellect, and I don't do stuff like that. I mean, it's interesting and it's fun, but I don't know that it's the right way to evolve oneself either. Sorry. Yeah, absolutely.
And just quickly, so you guys have a visualization in your head, the way that Julia's app works is that it actually, you embody, in a sense, a decision that you need to make. You feel it, and then you put you enter that decision, yay or nay, into the app, and then you put your finger on the phone, on the camera, and it's actually sensing certain aspects of the way your heart rate is changing. And she's doing some sophisticated analysis of that information to help you make that decision based on your own physiology, just so you guys have a picture of the app.
Right. So for the first part of what you said, Harry, yeah, my example was of a situation where you might fear something, but it would be useful for you to do it anyway. That registers, at least on this app in my testing, differently from something that you fear with very good reason that would be bad for you, right? So those are different. There's the fear of something that you need to do, and there's the fear of something like jumping off a cliff, like, that seems like a bad thing for you to do. So those are different things, and you have research related to that, right? So that's one thing. The other piece of it is that I tell in the tutorial, because I'm concerned about this, right? What if, obviously we don't know everything, and I don't want people using it as a be-all, end-all. So it almost seems grandiose, but in this tutorial I say, look, if this thing consistently gives you one answer and you feel that it's incorrect, don't friggin' use the answer. Like, trust your intuition. The whole point of the app is to get you to trust your intuition. If you already have a sense of it, then in a sense, throw away the app, right? Right? So that's the point.
Cool. Thank you. And to keep going with Harry, so your turn on the hot seat. So looking at space sort of beyond tapping into deeper wisdom per se, but maybe tapping actually into more the state of the body, the state of the mind, the state of the emotional system. Thinking about sort of diagnostic tools. And my question for you is, and you've been in this space, in this industry for quite a while, what do you see as the evolving potential to create new types of tools and technologies that perhaps are based on an unconventional understanding, one that we might be familiar with in this conference, but the vast majority of the world is not, to create diagnostic tools and technologies to help us understand this system, this body, this interconnectedness?
Sure. I mean, I think there's a number of trends going on at the moment. Obviously, we've just heard this trend, I think, of you saying of Apple and Google approaching Heartmath, and obviously we've got a huge amount of rise of technology, well, basically personal empowerment apps and tools that are all going into our own hands. And then from that, so it's easy to imagine, I think you were mentioning about big data earlier, it's easy to imagine that now all of this information that we're going to end up on our phones and from our phones, it's going to be up in the cloud, and all of that data is going to help to improve the analysis and that then feeds back into that technology. And then by the time you collect all of that data across, because you can get information out of the voice, you can get it out of the heart, you can get it out of his device from breathing, you can get it out of sort of neuro things. I mean, there's so many different sort of data points that you can get. And once you start combining all those, and obviously it's not hard to imagine that instead of just the phone detect, well, as Deborah says, the phones in 5-10 years time, they're going to detect every sort of little thing that we can't even imagine today, and we're going to have right in our hands this incredibly powerful tool where we're going to know everything that's going on in our body. And obviously, hopefully, we can use, well, not hopefully, we'll be able to use that to improve both our health and our lives in general. And that's going on in parallel with this trend in medicine. That's going to completely destroy medicine without a doubt, because we're taking the power away from doctors and medical records, and the doctor knows what's going on to us knowing what's going on. And we go to the doctor, well, actually, my app says this, blah, blah, blah. And there's just a huge shift in obviously in society and technology with what's going on there. Take that a bit further into more unconventional. I mean, we make. In fact, we did this 10 years ago, but I mean, we make a piece of software that actually looks in spikes and random noise connected to different health parameters, and we can basically do health diagnostics based on randomness, which fortunately or unfortunately, like unfortunately in the Valley where we are, is a little bit innocent from England. I thought you could come to the Valley and people would grab onto that idea, but for those ideas are a little bit too far ahead of the science of the Valley, so they wouldn't be accepted today, but they're very likely to be accepted in the future. So although we have technology now destroying medicine, I think you've got another era 10, 15 years from now where the application of quantum physics in communications, healthcare, computing, am I missing any, energy, will also destroy a number of things. I mean, a little bit like we've had, I guess, the steam chain and industrial revolution, computing, internet. Now what we're talking about with health apps going to the power of our hands is going to destroy medicine. I think the next era coming is the birth of the quantum age. That's going to completely destroy computing, telecommunications. We won't need all this lovely Wi-Fi crap around. Tesla worked it out 100 years ago, but I mean, it's sort of there again that all these things can happen. It's going to change how health is done, because really, ultimately, we're all information and energy machines. I mean, back to Einstein equals mc squared. In the end, we are information structured energy, and we can detect the energy and information that's going on in your body. You can also change that information and energy.
What you had was chronic fatigue syndrome? I'm joking. Something came through you.
Anyway, yeah. So there's going to be another large revolution coming. It's going to be an interesting 50 years. But
Cool. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Yeah. Go. I'm just kidding. You're on. Just kidding.
All right, thanks, Mikey.
Emptiness. Go.
So,
No, just kidding. No, you're getting a question.
I am?
Oh yeah. So, Linda. So you have an incredible background in the technology space, but not coming at it as an engineer, but really thinking holistically, thinking about how humans, the human system, relates to technology, how it affects us. You coined terms like email, apnea, and this is really thinking deeply about the relationship between humans and technologies. And the most recent culmination of all of that thought and all of that energy is what you're calling essential self skills, practices, and technologies, where the technology is one word at the end of a much bigger vision. And so I wonder if you could take a few minutes and talk about what this framework is, this space is that you're thinking about, and how technology fits into that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Mikey and I have a really playful way of talking about this. So if you see us in a corner talking, you're welcome to eavesdrop anytime around the conference. So I talk about essential self skills, practices, and technologies as being imperative for 21st century survival. Right now in our relationship to technology, it's a prosthetic of mind. It's not a prosthetic of being. And so when I think about essential self skills, I think about autonomic self-regulation. I think about autonomic resilience, where my nervous system can handle whatever comes my way. I think about embodiment, which a healthy person has a mind-body partnership, not a quantified self, technology dictating to mind, dictating to this subservient slave of a body, but a real partnership where the wisdom of the body meets the mind and the spirit, and they're all collaborators in our experience, both individually and together, because parts of the self dissolve. We become very connected when this is what it's about. So essential self skills I touched on. Practices, this group more than any other group that I've ever spoken with is very steeped in a range of practices. Technologies, and in the technology space, Mikey refers to this as transformative technology. And our ongoing fun conversation is that I see one approach as being technology-driven, people-inclusive, and when I look at the essential self-technologies area, I look at it as people-driven, human-driven, technology-inclusive. So how is it that technologies are temporary prostheses to enhance our human experience, our sense of embodiment, our autonomic resilience, if you will? And a really super quick story about why, what sort of has taken me in this direction actually relates to Heartmath technology. And I mentioned this story to Deborah a little bit earlier. When I realized that I wasn't breathing whenever I sat at the computer and gave it a name, email apnea or screen apnea, people said, well, I'm not breathing either. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And I started by playing with technologies that would help me count breaths. And I realized I never could translate that to any part of my life. But the people who didn't have email apnea were test pilots, performance dancers, performance musicians. They were people, professional athletes. They were people who were embodied, who had a relationship where they were fully embodied most of the time. And that was so interesting. And I discovered the Heartmath technology, and I would put the ear clip on while I was working at the computer so that I could just begin to notice what it felt like to be embodied versus not embodied when I was in front of the screen. I wanted to make that connection because most people, if you say to them, how do you feel when they're working in front of a screen? They say, I don't know how I feel. And you say, okay, well, time to breathe, time to get up, time to move. I was demoing the Heartmath technology at a conference, and at that conference, I was showing people how they could move into heart coherence, where they were in a calmer state. And I was showing them a breathing technique, and of course, I'm demoing in front of 40 people, and there are people like the founder of WordPress and, O'Reilly Media. There are all these techies who are looking at this saying, all right, does it work? Is it interesting? And nothing I was doing with my breath was changing what was happening on this little monitor as I was standing in front of 40 people. And so I looked at the group and I said, it isn't only managing the breath. Breathing, emotion, and attention are very related to each other. So it isn't just about managing the breath. It's about bringing these things all together and understanding they're in a relationship. And I said, so one way of also getting to this heart coherence is through embodied gratitude. And I looked around the room, and I looked specifically at Matt Mullenweg, who had helped me move my stuff over to WordPress. And I just looked, which I needed to do because I was on a Jotspot wiki and it sucked. And so I looked at Matt, and I just started to say, Matt, thank you so much. And before I finished the sentence, the entire audience gasped because they could see that the light went from red to green immediately. So for me, I'd been trying all these different ways to find a way there. And anyway, it was this set of experiences dealing with health issues that required a relationship with my body that was not one of you're betraying me, but that was one of I accept you, however you are, I accept you. And so, thank you. And so I look at this very broadly, essential self skills, practices, technologies that are temporary prostheses that bring us to a place where we can be embodied in the same way that a musician playing an instrument might merge with the instrument when they're a beginner, but as they become a more experienced musician, they're completely embodied. What are the technologies that are going to bring me into this moment, this life, right now? Oh, you've got yours.
That's a great lead-in to Neema. So Neema, your work has been incredibly interesting, starting with your graduate work and your founding of the Calming Technology Lab, where you were focusing on the breath, something so fundamental to our, as Linda was saying, our embodied experience, something so fundamental to life and our well-being, something that's woven throughout contemplative traditions and practices. And what you're doing now with Spire is you are creating the first mainstream consumer technology that's actually aware of breath and has the ability to help bring the user's attention back to their own body and back to their own breath. And so you're really merging these two things together, technology and breath and body awareness. And so my question for you is, why the breath? From your perspective, what's motivated you, and maybe some examples of some of the research there, and what do you see as the potential in this marriage of breath and technology?
Yeah, so there's really two things. I mean, one is what the breath can do, and I think Linda was also pointing to what the breath can't do. And thinking about what it can't do, it makes us ask, well, then what is the role of the breath? And so, just frankly, what the breath can do. So the breath it's non-dogmatic, it's non-judgmental, it's universal, it's from 5 years old to 100 years old. It doesn't require us to stop what we're doing and do an exercise. It doesn't require anything except even just, oh yeah, that thing. So there's all these kind of positive aspects of it. There's also like really interesting physiological things that a lot of people don't know, which is, as you breathe, during the inhale, your heart rate actually goes up, and on the exhale, it slows down. They're totally different. The inhale and the exhale are totally different. Second of all, the pauses in between are also totally different. And if you look at pranayama and you read Light on Pranayama, which is one of my favorite books on pranayama, they go into the details of that. But for example, if you're an archer and you're shooting an arrow, the most still part of your experience, your being, is at the pause after your exhale. Not the pause after your inhale, like, it's not that one. It's actually the other one. And you can really feel it yourself when you try it. So the breath has just all these interesting characteristics that are just very easy to experiment. Now I'm doing this for everything, but they're interesting to experiment with yourself. So on the flip side, the breath is often used as this mindfulness tool, as we know, right? So you have this great lecture or experience or meditation, and someone asks, well, where is your breath? And the breath is kind of this return to the body, and it can associate with whatever experience that you had, whatever insight or wisdom that you had in the lecture or the experience. And of course, there's things like transformational breathing, where through the breathing alone, you are shifting the nervous system, you are shifting. Actually, if you've never tried it, I really recommend holotropic or transformational breathing if you've never tried it, because it is, I did it once in a group of like 50 people, and about 20% of people were like, that was just like having an ayahuasca experience.
Can you describe what it is?
Okay, so I haven't done holotropic breathing, but transformational breathing is when you breathe in and out at a particular cadence regularly and consistency. It's a little faster and more forceful than you would just normally. So you're doing that, but you're doing that for an extended period of time. And you're lying down. And in the one I did, there was then after like half an hour of doing that, which is not easy. It's really not easy. You're not hyperventilating, so you've maintained that control. So you're just kind of and they start playing music. And I'm not sure actually if that's required or not. I don't think so. But there's then a whole sequence of what differs for everybody. So I'll kind of stop there. But it's pretty incredible, and it's a very spiritual and kind of one of these insight experiences. So now thinking about what the breath can't do. So at least in my opinion, in my experience, having done this work and now creating a product, is that Linda was speaking about counting breaths and having the experience be about only the breath and changing the breath, and that can be a problem. So what you're really after is using the breath to reintegrate or bring back that wisdom experience, that insight experience that you've had, and so to re-experience it. So just like in a mindfulness course, there's some insights you have about non-duality or about something, and then the breath brings that back. It triggers that parasympathetic nervous system. It does a host of physiological things, but also even cognitive things to bring that back. So,
and breathing and emotion are definitely, they're very connected. So you can get to a breath through an emotional state, or you can learn more about yourself through what you learn about how you're breathing.
Yeah.
So it's very powerful.
Yeah. So there's really, they talk about the breath is the bridge between the conscious and subconscious, because if you look at all the physiological signals and the things that change when you're tense or focused or relaxed or whatever, one of them is both an indicator and can be consciously controlled, and that's the breath. It's like this, and actually there's some interesting things I was just learning. I was talking about this at the Buddhist Geeks conference last week, is that monkeys and apes, they have no conscious control over their breath. On the flip side, dolphins and whales have nothing but conscious control. They don't have that autonomic control. So every breath, that's why you think about it, if you're a whale, I mean, you're timing your breath. Everyone imagine you're a whale. So you take a breath and you go down, and you know you got to get back up, and you're timing everything you're doing for 45 minutes or however long it is until you can come back up. So it's like every breath is intentional, and we're just right in between. And some of us closer to this side, some of us closer to this side sometimes. And there's a whole interesting discussion about dolphins and whales that I got into with the guy, what that must imply about them. But anyway, so there are dangers to bringing the breath to awareness in the way that Spire does. Whereas, if you treat it as this, cure-all that I'm always just going to be breathing all the time, no, you need to be engaged in life. And you don't always want to be pushing on the lever a certain way. When you're driving, it's not like gas, brake. It's like, it's like, you use it, and you hit the brake a little bit, and you use it, and you coast, and you go, and you hit the gas a little bit, and you coast, and it's a really smooth ride. So with our app experience, that's where, where that comes to life, and that's where it's a lot of testing with a lot of different kinds of people with different kinds of experiences. And it's very exciting. It's also a big responsibility in a lot of ways. And but if not us, then who, kind of thing. We got to make sure we do it first and get there, so that we steer the ship in the right direction. Yeah.
Thanks. So, for our last 30 some odd minutes, I'm going to start by throwing a big, open-ended, big picture question out to the group, and I think I'm just going to throw it out to the group in general. Anyone can pick it up, take it any way they want to, and
Sorry, but we're going to let people ask questions too at some point, not the whole last 30 minutes, right?
and then after that, we're going to try to leave some time so that we can open it up to the audience and get some questions. So we'll try to do this for 15 minutes. And then we'll try to do questions for 15 minutes. So for my esteemed panel here, if you guys could keep your answers short and sweet so we have time for back and forth and some discussion. And so the question that I want to throw out to you, or the vision that I want you to comment on, is one way to think about these tools and technologies is thinking about them as part of an evolutionary process or process of optimization. And so we look, for example, at the traditional tools that we use, the meditation techniques and practices, the books we're reading, the lectures we hear, even this conference, in a sense. And this is all around trying to find different ways, different approaches in order to bring people to a deeper realization, a deeper feeling of embodiment, deeper sense of balance and connection. And so everyone on this panel is in some way or another trying to come up with some framework or tool in order to do that even better. And so the question is, what if we really think out to the far distant possibilities of what can be done here? What is the ultimate manifestation of these efforts? And I'd like to, this is a transformative technology panel, so if we can think about it in terms of technology, I think that's really interesting and great. So in a sense, is there a concept of an enlightenment button? Is there some concept of some ultimate manifestation of technology?
He says that word to irritate me.
That specifically for Linda. I'd actually like to call it the essential self button. Actually, officially changing the name of it now. So is there some notion of this ultimate manifestation of technology that's like the extreme optimization of this path, these tools, this effort that we're all putting in here? So
I'd love to address that because I was talking to Ray Kurzweil and Peter Diamandis a while back, from the Singularity, and they think everything's going to be robotics and consciousness, and the technology is going to go to this ultimate intellectual with some emotion experience. My view is that and this is from my perception and experience, and this can only be validated by people's own consciousness because there's no way to prove this yet, but that there's a dimensional shift going on. That there's new energies coming into this planetary system that is bringing this whole planet from a third-dimensional dualistic planet into a higher fourth unitive consciousness. And the Earth itself is intimately involved in this, and it's a much bigger picture than our little minds or brains can perceive yet, but we can open to it. And that opening is through heart-based living. It's through what the greats have said all through the ancients. It's about gratitude, forgiveness, acceptance, love, compassion, kindness, and really doing it, not just conceptualizing it or doing it on Sunday or when you meditate. That integration is what opens the access from the heart and the heart-brain synchronization to these new energies coming in. So we can access downloads. We can access what's going on.
Sorry, which integration?
Of the heart and brain and nervous system.
Okay.
And as we develop that antenna and access these quantum field, these higher dimensional energies, we will get downloads and directions of new technologies. Things we can't imagine yet. We couldn't imagine 20 years ago a lot of stuff that we have today. So my commitment, and I just want to mention the Global Coherence Initiative, is all about inviting all of you to participate. There's 55,000 members now. It's an initiative of Heartmath. It's where we see things going to facilitate the coupling of these dimensional energies with the Earth's fields, the ionosphere and the geomagnetic field, and our own hearts and our heart rhythms. And the inner balance and M-wave have 4 different challenge levels. So even if you're an advanced meditator, if you practice coherence, which is harder to do at the higher challenge levels because you have to really have that attention, the breath, and the emotion in sync at a certain frequency. And that's what gives, helps open the door. And as we do that collectively and we build coherence together, we can create a standing wave, critical mass, and we want to measure it. We're doing this with ions and ourselves and other research institutes, the Global Consciousness Project, random number generators, bringing together this co-creative effort of these leading-edge scientific institutions to look at all this and see how we can facilitate the whole planetary field environment with the heart coherence, the carryover effect, creating the field to make it easier for the masses through all your technologies and ours and others to shift so that collectively we can vibrate at resonance to bring in these new energies. So that's where I see it going. And out of that, tons of new technologies will happen. But it starts with the heart.
Cool.
And heart
So
intelligence.
I want to keep surfing on the Deborah wave here. Thank you, Deborah.
Thanks, Deborah.
So in surfing on the Deborah wave, the reason that I react to the notion of an enlightenment button is because I believe in agency. I believe in a sense of agency. In the same way that I love that I can breathe and I don't have to live life on a ventilator, I love having a sense of agency in my life. And so I see technologies as being exciting, and I think there will be more and thrilling and wonderful technologies, and the degree to which they are temporary prostheses that I use with my sense of agency to feel states that I've become distant from because of a disconnected and disorientation in my lifestyle, that's where I see all this. But an enlightenment button to me is like a ventilator. If I have to have it to remember how to breathe or to get me through a rough patch,
But
maybe.
this is also, sorry, can I add in here?
Hey, it's
So
your panel.
I remember when I was doing robotics, and we'd have these interesting social robots, and people would come into our lab and they'd look at the robots, and then often people would say something like, well, I wouldn't want that robot in my house because it's always going to be bugging me and it would look scary. And continually my answer is always, well, if it bugged you and it looked scary, then we wouldn't ever put it in your house. We would fix those problems first, and then we would put them in your house. And so I guess for you, I'd reframe the question, because you have certain implicit notions about what an enlightenment button is that are constructions that you've made. But no one is placing those upon you. For example, no one is talking about agency or even a sense of a necessary kind of relationship between the technology. The question is more for you, what is the ultimate manifestation of technology in any form, not in opposition to anything else or any other idea?
This is where I say we're doing a session today at 2 o'clock where we will continue to have this very spicy interaction with each other. But let's let others speak.
I want to jump in on this. The enlightenment button, the idea of, which I think is a really beautiful conversation point for exactly this reason. There's a fallacy built into it, though, and that's the assumption that there is some end point to technology, some end goal here. And we talk about enlightenment as though as though nirvana is the end thing, right? You know, but its depths and the rabbit hole doesn't end. It just goes deeper and deeper and deeper. And if we developed I don't really see a difference between developing an enlightenment button and developing a set of skills that makes teaching meditation easier. I don't see a real qualitative difference between a technology like SoundSelf or technology like an enlightenment button or technology like any of the things that we're talking about and any of the technologies that have been developed over the last 4,000 years or so that make the exploration of an inner world more accessible. Maybe the question is, I mean, we've had over the last few thousand years, these technologies, they take a long time to catch on. So if a technology doesn't work very well, either it integrates into the society and makes a sick society, or it evolves out, right? And with the rate that technology changes, do we have the, I guess, the ability to catch something negative before it spreads? I don't know, but I think the only difference here, I think, is how fast the technology changes and spreads, and not the nature of the technology itself.
Cool. I mean, I've got two viewpoints on it. I've got a present view of, I guess, where we are today, and a futuristic view. I mean, the present view of it, technology is only a tool. You know, a tool can do good things, it can do bad things. Doesn't really matter. We can do it without the tool, we can do it with the tool. So I mean, there is, as far as I'm concerned, the present point of view, the enlightenment button is a silly question because it's just a tool, so it doesn't really exist. If you go to a massively future view, so Deborah just brought up the singularity people, and you know, Ray Kurzweil. I mean, he's quite an amazing person, but I might just amplify his viewpoint a little bit more. So if we go into the future a bit, there's a blend between man. Well, there's a couple of things. One where artificial intelligence gets beyond our own intelligence, and at that point, I think he calls that the singularity, where it just accelerates at this sort of almost infinite rate. So the intelligence of machines and computers just goes up into the stratosphere. While that's also happening, there's a blend between man and machine, and at some point, like, our biology becomes an insignificant piece.
Humans.
Humans.
Sitting
Doesn't
between
matter.
two women. Have you noticed? Yes, part of humans. Okay.
All right. Well, I'm a gay boy, so I don't know where that puts me. But all right. Anyway, we won't worry about it. That's how we
Go through it off.
Humans and machines.
Yeah. So sorry. So Yeah, so sorry, as humans start to blend with machines, and the artificial intelligence goes way beyond, our own human capacity, like the biology part of the future becomes infinitesimally small compared to, I guess, to the machine and information and intelligence point. And then when you're looking at that enlightenment thing, if intelligence is almost at an infinitely larger rate than any of us can conceive today and just keeps going and transforms the world and then the universe as we know it, I mean, maybe those machines and computers are all enlightenment, and well, obviously there's no button. They just are enlightened, and our own human experience is massively amplified and massively insignificant at the same time.
If I can,
I cannot wait to speak next. So thank you for saying that. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's really important to use language that's inclusive. So, thank you. So this transhumanist Ray Kurzweil singularity idea. So I'm Jewish, and there's this relationship between Jews and evangelical Christians. Don't worry, this relates. Such that evangelical Christians can't wait for Jews to go to Jerusalem and be in Israel, because then that means Jesus can come again. So it's like the order of events. First get the Jews in Israel, then Jesus can come. And the Jews are all for that, right? So there's this interest, they're not for it because they think Jesus is going to come again. They're all for it because, wouldn't it be great if all the Jews went to Israel, right? And so the traditional or the conservative Jews and the evangelical Christians are odd bedfellows, but for different reasons. Well, so I feel the same way about Ray Kurzweil and the transhumanist movement. I think Ray Kurzweil has this unhealthy, disembodied state where he believes that intelligence is the best thing going. Certainly not bragging, but just numerically, I've been very intelligent all my life. I can tell you it's not the be-all, end-all. You all are very intelligent people. You know it's not the be-all, end-all. Intelligence is not the deal. It's the booby prize. And I can't wait for the singularity to actually happen. When we look and we see the computers and they're so smart and everything, we realize, oh my God, that's also not it. And then we can get on with it. So to me, what I see is different fields are coming to the same answer over and over again. Art, music, dance, science, math, any kind of physics, sociology, anthropology, just the understanding creativity. They're coming to the same answer, and then we turn to the next field and see if we're going to get a different answer. So now the hot thing is technology. Maybe with enough technology we'll find an answer. Well, we're going to find an answer, and it's going to be the same answer. And it's not going to have anything to do with uploading our consciousness, and it's going to have everything to do with realization of the one.
Cool. And we don't have time. So Neema, do you want to have a final comment here? Or if you don't want to, but what you see as the possibilities ahead down the road for technology. Sort of thinking off into the future. But you don't have to answer if you don't want.
What I was going to say is that I personally don't believe in enlightenment. I believe in enlightened moments. And so the potential for a technology to bring about enlightened moments it's much more clear, because you have technologies that provide experiences that create insights and spark new connections that change our perspective. And then B, you have another class of technologies that bring that insight back, or let us know perhaps when is a good time an opportunity to have an insight or something like that. And these two kind of play on each other. So there's like wisdom, and then there's presence. And living wisdom is presence, and it's just like, I don't know, the whole singularity thing, I'm still learning, I'm trying to learn what these people think is going to happen and really internalize it, but this I can see clearly, so.
Cool. That's what I think. So thank you, Neema. So thank you to our panelists. We're gonna now take questions from the audience, so we can get our wireless mic. There we go. You can help? Okay, great, thanks, Joe. So let's go back to these hands reaching into the sky over here.
Hi, I'm Jen Healy, and I just wanted to do like a virtual group hug because I'm so passionate about this and so
Group high
excited to
five.
feel
Yay.
fully alive in this conversation. Although I love everything, Maurice especially, this is what I'm all about. And it's really nice to see at a conference that we're getting into it, particularly with technologies. So I'll give a tiny little background about me. I, for the last 12 years, have been working with healing technologies and the idea of using technologies to advance the body's healing process through the kind of entrainment and remembrance of what frequency modulation is. And that was kind of the question that was going along about the enlightenment button. And it's like, maybe if we change what we mean by button, it would like make a little bit more sense to everyone and be more inclusive, because it is an inclusive universe. So the idea is that maybe we can use these technologies to help us remember who we are. So maybe that's the oneness and the singularity. So exactly, and so everything you guys are saying are really pointing to that same truth, which is the singularity, which is the quantum entanglement, which is all the quantum effects that we're experiencing with the technologies and how they can serve that. So my desire for this panel, and the question is really open-ended, is like, how can we talk about where we're intersecting, like sacred geometry? Where is that place where all the intersecting circles are pointing to the same truth? Instead of like the back and forth about this and that, or like, well, I'm not really sure about that. You know, like I've heard that a lot about on the discussion panels this whole weekend, which was really interesting because everybody has a point of view, and well, we are infinite and eternal, so that could last a while. But where can we really sit in the place where everything we're saying really intersects in that singularity of truth, of unity, of oneness? And maybe just revisit some of the questions that we were just visiting about maybe the enlightenment button, which I see as technologies really informing and infusing us with the same electromagnetic codes and the consciousness and the higher dimensions and all this coming through, which helps us remember who we are. So maybe just open it up in that sense, and also include the audience, because I know that this room is filled with brilliant people that might also want to be on that discussion panel.
Cool, which I think we're doing all the, thank you, and I hope that we are doing all those things. So if anyone else in the audience would like to comment, thank you for that. Anyone else have any, Jeff?
Sorry, that'd be great. Yeah, I think everyone, my background's in system dynamics and controls, mechanical. I step outside the box and look at humans as biobot, all of life as a kind of robotics problem. And I won't say the rest, but anyway, I understand complex problems by slicing them as many ways as I can find that prove valid. And I think we're all interested in making something that can engage as wide an audience as possible in this project. And the one thing that occurs to me is that the strongest engagement that would work towards, I think it can be remapped as a creativity project to engage in different aspects of gaming, or especially as one area where I think it can be viewed as engaging in creativity actually moves you in the right direction without labeling it as a practice. And I'm wondering, I just invite any comments on that, otherwise it's a statement.
I think you're sort of hitting the nail on the head on what some of the friction is getting these ideas out. What we talk about here and what we talk about very seriously here, if you come to this without healthy skepticism, without what we were talking about, a practice of skepticism, and instead come to it with the received ideology from our rationalist Western. It can all sound really woo-woo. It can all sound like, I mean, we've all encountered this. You talk to your friends about something, or I've encountered this. I talk to my friends about something that I experience very personally, that I have a scientific interest in, and like coming up with the words to not sound, for people to take me seriously is difficult. I think what I'm trying to do anyway, and this is why I'm approaching this problem through novelty, I'm not trying to get people meditating, I'm not trying to enlighten people, I'm trying to give people a really incredible experience of self, and that's it. that's one entry point. That's one very valid entry point in making this area of exploration less intimidating. Is if you are inviting people into something that really to experience properly you need a practice of, people are only going to embrace that if A, they think they have a really deep need of something, or B, they've got lots of time to, like, I have time to take on a 30-hour a month self-exploration project. I think just novelty, just having these things available to play with, and if they want to play with it and then continue playing and then maybe develop a practice, great, and if they don't, then great. I think that's my approach anyway.
Cool. Thanks, Robin. And I think we've got time for maybe one more question. Yeah. So phrase your question succinctly and quickly. And then Maurizio after.
Jumping.
Okay.
My question is by way of analogy. The question I would ask the inventors of email is, how would you handle the phenomenon of spam? So my question to you is, in your own personal practice, how does your personal practice prepare you for the perhaps unintended or unknowable consequences of the powerful technologies you're developing?
Wait, Maurizio, did you have a question or an announcement, or was it a question to the panel?
Let's hear all the questions.
Okay, let's hear your comment and then answer Kartik's question, and then we'll.
First of all, thank you so much for being here. It's extremely empowering to us to have your presence here. We feel extremely honored, and I really mean it from the bottom of my heart. In my view, since we, as human beings, we realize that wow, we look in the mirror, we realize that something strange is happening, we realize our separation, and there have been many parts, I'll call it meditation, shamanic journeys, psychology, quantum physics, whatever you want. You guys are creating a new door. That's how I feel. And that's the exciting part. I see there is a new door. It didn't exist, a technological door. You guys are making a new door, and it's messy at the beginning. You don't know where it's gonna go. Oh shit, this is a wall still. You're doing an amazing job. And light and bottom, I don't know, but it's just a new door. Anyway, this door at the end, somebody said the same thing. It's gonna be another finger pointing to the moon. It's not the moon itself. So the moon stay up there. You guys are making another portal into this, and we try all together to hack this consciousness deal and try to figure out who we are. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maurizio. And so let's take Kartik's question, and then we may be wrapping it up after that.
I'd like to speak to your question. I think it's a brilliant question, and it's really important. And for me, and only me, I will say that my practice of science is a mystical practice. So the process of science is, and this should, by the way, be taught to kids in schools. It bothers me that it's not. But the point of science is not the output, because the output's going to be wrong, right? You're always going to prove something wrong and understand something better, hopefully, if science is doing its job. The point of science is to train people to ask good questions and then observe well to get good answers, and then to share what has been observed, and then to start again, right? That's the point of science, is to go through that cycle. And so that practice is what keeps me in a place of not knowing in relationship to, for instance, this app, and makes me feel like I have to say to people, always follow your intuition. The app is a tool, and you only use it to the extent that it helps. And so to create a sense of reverence for the person rather than the technology.
Agency. Some call it agency. Some call it a sense of agency, just saying.
Sorry, just a quick note. So the way I would see it is, just like books, there's spam books. Just like apps, there's spam apps. Just like technologies, there's going to be spam technologies. Spam is a derogatory term. Some of those are like genuine emails trying to contact people. So we'll deal with it the same way we've been dealing with it. The cream rises to the top. Tools will be designed to discern and rate, and there'll be collaborative filtering processes where, but that doesn't mean that those fringe ones are bad, because that's where some insights can happen. I think. Yeah,
cool. Thank you. And I think in that sense, there are no rules here. There is no fixed thing that technology is or fixed framework for it. We are here in conversation, in process, with our embodied selves, with our experience, creating new doors, creating new pointers, and creating new possibilities. And so it's been a beautiful discussion. I want to thank all of you for joining in, and all of you here for joining in this space of exploration and this space of possibility. So may we all continue that exploration, and may we create new tools, new doors, new technologies, new pointers, new evolutionary avenues for human beings. So thank you all.
Thank you.